So one of the best things about being a web designer and developer is you get to learn from each project that you work on. It's so great because you could see yourself getting better each time you work on a project, and that's exactly what just happened to me, so I'd love to talk to you about it. What's up guys, Jerry here from Synergy Digital, helping you excel in your creative agencies. On this channel we do no-code tool reviews, tutorials, and all things web design and web development. So if you like the sound of that, make sure you hit the like on this video and subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all things web design and web dev. If you want to check out anything I talk about in this video, I've included links in the show notes under the like button. So recently I've been working on a project for a client that I ended up actually bartering with, which is something that I've never done before, and I want to talk about that experience and my takeaways from it. So instead of being compensated for a site, I've decided to get a service from that individual in exchange for a website, and we worked it out in our contract. We started working on the site back in April, and it's gone through many iterations since, and I wanted to talk about some of those key takeaways that I've learned because we've strayed a little bit away from what I traditionally do, and it's given me a lot of insight about how I'm going to handle my next client, and I hope that helps you as well. Just for a little bit of background, the client is working on a service-based website which is focused on joining the community as well as his consultation packages. So it's relatively simple. It's a homepage, service page, about page, and a contact form for them to be able to join the community. And what's interesting is this client is just starting up, so they don't have much of a business plan, they don't have much of marketing materials, copyright, or anything to go off of. So this is their idea that they'd like to bring to light with a website for the launch. Now, I've worked with many clients in a very similar way. They have an idea, they want to get off the ground running, but they don't have much of a business plan. I actually really enjoy working with clients who are like that because it's kind of fun. You're being a part of the startup, you're helping them, you're advising them on the best things that they could do, and it's a really overall exciting experience. So my client is very ambitious and he wants to see things visually, which is a thing that we always do as web designers. Most of the time, we show our mock-ups to a client before we actually go ahead and develop. So when I work out my deals with clients, I tell them we're going to be in a design phase. The design phase is usually 2 weeks of my time where I'm spending time wireframing, designing everything all through Sketch. So the way I usually do it is I start with Platforma, which is a mock-up and wireframing template that you could get online for Sketch, Figma, or Adobe XD. And then from there, I puzzle out the entire wireframe, I display it to the clients, and I see what they like, what they don't like. But usually at this point, it's just a very rough draft, almost like an actual blueprint. And then from there, once we figure out the way that the client would like the users to interact best on the site, that's when we actually start designing over top of the wireframe. So the process of actually designing takes about 2 weeks, and that's spent finding fonts, finding the right color schemes, and actually putting all the assets in place to get everything ready for web development. Now for this client in particular, we decided to use Elementor and WordPress to build the site. We figured this was the best approach because the site is very CMS heavy, and Elementor with blog posts, recommendations, affiliate products, it really is an all-around great suite that I like for that style website. So we started working on the design, and I finalized a homepage that I sent to him, and when we were done with it, I put it in markup.io. And from that design that I put in markup, I had a lot of revisions to work on, so I went back to the drawing board and presented him with a second design. And when I finally sent him the second design, he requested that we try to build it in WordPress to see what it would look like when you're interacting with it. Now this is where I believe I made a mistake along the process. Now instead of sticking with my traditional method of designing first and then developing, I decided it would make sense for him to see it in WordPress as well, so I started to build that design within WordPress and Elementor. And that's where I think the biggest learning lesson has stemmed from for this project. Following me porting that second design into WordPress, things got a lot more complicated. Now because the client's a startup-based business and this was only the second revision, this caused a lot more revisions that were pretty difficult to do just in WordPress alone. So my biggest takeaway from this is for future projects, I will never import my design into WordPress until the design is final, even if the client wants to see it within WordPress. Because of the amount of revisions and the back and forth, especially with a startup business, it caused a lot of problems, a lot of revisions, and a lot of slowdown to the site that was unnecessary. necessary. That's why it's better, and I'll never do this again, it's better to just stick to your design software, whether it's Sketch, Figma, or Adobe XD, until you and the client are 100% on the design. Because now essentially I have to go back to the drawing board, having pretty much left my sketch file behind and just started implementing in WordPress. It has caused a lot more lag time. So I wanted to reflect this as a general rule of thumb. If you're doing a web project, you should keep your design separate from development. You should make sure your design file in Sketch, Figma, or Adobe XD is completely finalized before you implement in any software. Whether it's WordPress, Webflow, Wix, or any of the others, you need to make sure everything is concrete before you go to implement. Because usually implementing alone takes some time because you have to port everything into an actual development, and then you have to build everything on the back end to make sure it's running smoothly. So that's a mistake that I'm glad I'm learning at the moment, but I will never make again. My design stays my design. Once it's 100% finalized, then we move on to the development, and I will never combine the two again. The next thing that I learned from working with this client in particular was to set better expectations. Based off of my traditional workflow where I'm designing first and then developing, I have a rough idea of how long a site typically takes. Usually my sites take around a month and a couple weeks, and that's the expectation I set with the client at first. But because we ported the design over to WordPress and there was many more revisions, I kind of still managed to tell him that I was sticking to my guns with the timeline, which caused the client to be a little upset when we ran past the deadline. Now, fortunately, since then we've altered our expectations, but that was a mistake on my part. I should have been more upfront, and it caused a little bit of a miscommunication between the two of us. For as small and simple as this one is, I think it's very important that you set those expectations with the client up front instead of causing miscommunications down the road. So to wrap it up, from this most recent project I work on, two big takeaways came out of it. Number one, always leave your designs in the design software until they are final, and number two, set better expectations. I hope in some way, shape, or form this helped you. I don't have a script or anything, so I was just speaking from the heart about some things that I actually learned very recently. Oh, and for the record, it's been quite some time since I made my last post, and I hope to never go this long without making a post again. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so it was kind of a rough time to be making videos. I hope you understand. Hopefully my time frames will be a lot less in the future. Can't make a promise on that. I do work full-time and this is a side hustle. But anyway, next video, I'll be talking about WordPress plugins and the best ones to use. Look out for that. Don't have an exact date of when that's coming out. Maybe already here or here by the time you're watching this video. But yeah, until the next one, peace out.